What are the biggest question marks surrounding the Minnesota Vikings right now? They're not many, but they deserve to be fleshed out a little bit. Plus, one that really hasn't gotten much attention because we didn't even know it could be a problem until a couple days ago. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show, sponsored by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. Dave, if we were going hunting, I wouldn't be able to miss you.
Yeah, well, hey, it's one of those type of days. I've been outside working and just decided to wear an orange shirt.
I like orange. How's the new house going? Good?
It's coming together very well.
That's good.
Yes.
Let's talk about things that could go poorly for the Minnesota Vikings. How about we do that? So this kind of came across my radar. I want to say it was probably last week, whenever the West Phillips extension got signed. And Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune reported that they would like to sign Brian Flores to an extension, and that his contract expires at the end of the year. Now, this piqued my attention because I'm like, okay, why wouldn't he sign a contract extension? Because he can interview for whatever promotion he wants, which would be a head coaching job, and he wouldn't have to worry about it. Like, they'll let him go interview for whatever head coaching job. That's always a thing. Now, a lateral move, another defensive coordinator job, they'll block on site. No, we're not going to let you interview for that job, which it's their prerogative. You don't let a guy leave for the same position unless you think he sucks. If you like him and you think he's good, you keep him. So the fact that he hasn't been willing to at this point sign an extension, which was kind of the vibe I got, not necessarily that he won't ever want to sign an extension, but that one hasn't been agreed to yet, tells me that he doesn't want to sign an extension for one of many reasons. And one of them being he doesn't want to sign one, period. The other one is he just doesn't like the terms that the Vikings are offering. And to me, those are the two really big ones, especially what we know about Brian Flores is he loves it here. Yeah, he loves being here. His family likes it here. That matters. We tend to only think about the football side, but the human side matters just as much, because if you hate being somewhere, like I lived in South Dakota for a better part of a year. It's a nice place. I hated it. It was not for me because I felt I was in a suburb, but there was no major city within 40 miles. And then the major city within 40 miles was smaller than the spot I was living. So it just wasn't for me. And if it's not for you, that can become a major factor. But by all accounts, that's not a thing. Now, if it is, we'll update that. But I found it really interesting when I saw it float across my timeline on Twitter. Ben Gessling was talking about on Access Vikings how he hasn't signed that extension. And I want to pull this up, Dave, because I think this quote is really telling. Says the reason he brings that up, Brian Flores, is also in a contract year. There is, I think, interest in an extension from the team. I'll be curious to see if Flores decides to sign something or if he tries to test the market, because he was in those head coaching conversations last year with a couple teams. I wonder how that's going to go. And if he does test the market, if it's a coordinator job somewhere else, it was a head coaching job somewhere else who replaces him. That verbiage, Dave, is very, very interesting to me. And something I learned from Judd Zulgad, which I think is a really good thing and also a really bad thing, because it's good to be able to read between the lines and being able to try and figure out if something is a schism but in this sense, I think it's really interesting because maybe there actually is one and we just don't know it yet. Brian Flores wanting to potentially pursue a defensive coordinator job outside of Minnesota is fascinating to me. And I want to be clear. Ben is not saying that that's what he wants to do. But Ben has been a beat reporter for a long time. He is respected across the country for the job that he does. He's won multiple awards for his reporting. Ben saying this in any form tells me that there's some credence to it of some kind. Now, how strong is that credence? Is Brian Flores just done with this organization? Probably not. But there's probably some level of frustration where he would actually consider wanting to leave. And I find that very interesting because Ben is not the kind of person, like, we will talk on here, we'll opine on things like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? If Ben says something, it's not nothing. It's a breadcrumb leading to somewhere, and what that somewhere is, we don't know. But it's very interesting that he said it. Could this be a pathway to a potential schism within the front office, within the coaching staff? Could this just be Brian Flores wants more money and some of this is posturing? I don't know. But I'm going to keep an eye on this. I'm going to put this in. My wife calls the little file guy in my head. She named him Pedro. Right? Because I have this uncanny ability to remember the most useless information, but I can't remember to do the dishes.
That's a husband bonkers thing. Never mind.
Oh, it was that way before I was in a relationship. My brain just remembers the useless facts and all this kind of stuff. So I'm gonna file that with Pedro, and we're gonna figure it out.
Well, it could be just a negotiation thing, like you mentioned. The Vikings are going to start out low, which low means whatever he's getting paid now plus a little bit. And Flores may say, hey, KOC just got this massive contract. He was head coach of the year. Well, I helped make him head coach of the year because I have basically head coach defense responsibilities. I should be paid near what he got paid. And they may be now negotiating between those numbers. And one may be this high at $5 million and the other one may be at $15 million. Whatever it is. And it may just come down to that. It's just a money thing. We've seen negotiations for the Minnesota Vikings via players or coaches generally come down to the last minute, even though they've been started long before. And I think it may be a business practice of the owners to do that. And we'll see how. I'm curious too, because would he be open to a lateral move? How would that look for him? I don't know. I doubt it. But hey,
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is a for sure thing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think this is going to happen. But saying that he could potentially pursue another defensive coordinator job is not a nothing burger. So I'm going to really monitor this. And Gessling is smart. He is intentionally not saying anything concrete. He's being a beat reporter. He is trying to lay nuggets for you to try and parse and figure out. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep an eye on this. Because if he really wanted a head coaching job.
Hey, it's moving slowly, the negotiations, for whatever reason.
It could be, but I don't think that would be the reason why he threw this out there. Like, those two things to me don't intersect. And what's really interesting is if he signed an extension, and I mentioned this earlier, he could go out and still interview for every single head coaching job. So that's not even a thing. He can do whatever he wants when it comes to head coaching jobs. The Vikings are not going to stop him. Now, they want to keep him because he's been so good for this team and this defense. Plus, like, if they lose him, like, they get a benefit. They get 2 third-round compensatory picks. That is massive. What the era that the Vikings are currently about to enter. Because if you get 2 of those picks, guess what? That could be 2 real contributors on your football team. Like if Ty Felton becomes your wide receiver 3 and Mekhi Blackman becomes either your starting cornerback 2 or 3, that's 2 starting level players that you got in that range, the very end of the 3rd round. Both Blackman and Felton were pick 102, the final pick in the 3rd round, which is essentially what that pick would be that you would get for Brian Flores. So those picks will matter a lot. Now, you don't want to lose the guy anyways, but if you do, you get this benefit. So there's even, I'm not going to use the word incentive, but you're less inclined to try and deter that guy because you realize, hey, I'm going to get something on the back end if this guy leaves. And let's be real. They have a couple guys ready to potentially take over. Durante Jones has been receiving interviews, I believe, the last couple of years for potential defensive coordinator openings. And that stuff matters. You have a guy waiting in the wings. And because he's waiting in the wings, well, how long is he going to wait? Is he going to wait that long for his opportunity, Dave? I'm not convinced. Like, if an opportunity comes, he's probably going to take it.
There have been defensive coordinators that were head coaches, became defensive coordinators, and just finished out their careers, and very good ones. Fangio's one of them, per name. The Steelers had one that was so good. Now, as Brian says, Flores is still sort of waiting on that head coach job because of the lawsuits. And
it will take a special owner to be willing to hire that guy. Now, I think the Steelers would be an ownership group to hire that guy. I think the Vikings would be the ownership group to hire that guy, but they're not going to move on from Kevin O'Connell, so that's kind of a moot point. But there are some ownership groups who will look at that and be like, nah, you're right. We'll still hire you, and it'll piss off our boss. It'll piss off the rest of the owners, but look, when you're right, you're right. And that would be the philosophy that ownership group would have to take. Because what's interesting is good, like the owners don't work for Goodell. Goodell works for and paid by ownership. He is essentially, for lack of a better term, their punching bag. Whatever he does the owner's bidding. That is his job. He is essentially PR.
He gets rewarded for
a lobbyist
handsomely.
For the oh yeah, it's $40 million a year. It's
plus private
phenomenal money you can get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you really want to be the commissioner of the NFL, become a lawyer and start working at the league offices right now. Because that's what pretty much every commissioner is. They are lawyers. Basically, if you get a law degree, even if you never use it for actually practicing law, you're going to be in a good spot. So something to remember. But the Brian Flores thing, it could be absolutely nothing. It could be absolutely everything. It's probably somewhere in between. Where? We'll find out in time. But it's something to keep an eye on, something to put in the back of your head, file it away with Pedro, and we'll see what that ends up looking like. Because let me tell you, this could end up being something. I don't know if it will be. But Gessling doesn't say these things for nothing. He's a very, and I mean this in a very kind, professional way, he's an incredibly calculated speaker. He knows when to say things and how to say them. I mean, heck, that's what the organization is too. Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Ofo-Mensah, they come from the same line of thinking. Figure out what you want to say and craft your message and say it very calculated. It's political, sure, but it's also smart. You don't want to give up you don't want to show your cards. Show them like one card. Oh, you want a poker hand? Show them that you had an ace. And then don't show the rest. Well, what else did I have? Who knows? That's kind of what the Vikings do. So we'll see. We'll see, but there's plenty of other things to talk about. And I think the natural transition point here, Dave, is will the Vikings end up getting an extension done with Josh Metellus? Because another point that Gessling makes, and I completely agree with it, if he's such a big part of what Brian Flores wants to do, will he have the same value for the next guy? Whoever that may be, even if it's the same defense. How that individual wants to use players could be different, even within the same scheme. So will Josh Metellus have the same value for a new defensive coordinator? Could that be why contract negotiations haven't gone the way that Josh would have wanted? Because he's been very vocal. He loves Minnesota. He wants to stay here. But he's also smart, from an outside perspective looking in. He wants to get his money, and he deserves to. I'll support every athlete who wants to maximize their value while they're playing. If you want to take less, that is your choice. But you should try and make as much money as you can. But at the same time, money isn't everything. He'd probably want to stay in Minnesota than go to Green Bay if Green Bay was paying him more money. Why? Well, Green Bay kind of stinks. Like the town. It's a town of 100,000. It's fine, but there's not a whole lot to do. You're like a couple hours from Milwaukee. Like, it's just like a big suburb. Like, some people don't want to live there. They want to live more in like a city where you can get like.
Sounds like your South Dakota suburb that you lived in, but with a drinking problem.
Oh, Dave, South Dakota has a drinking problem too, let me tell you.
Oh, not as bad as Wisconsin.
Oh,
they're worldwide known.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now, T. Kubler says this is like watching a Godzilla movie from the 60s. Hey, I grew up watching those Godzilla movies from the 60s.
Godzilla rules, man. Oh, I love Godzilla. It's so corny and cheesy, but in a great way.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's ridiculous. It's like impossible. Who cares? It's Godzilla. It rules.
Hey, it's Japanese storytelling. It was awesome.
Oh, absolutely. All right. The Metellus thing is something I'm going to kind of keep monitoring. Another thing Gessling mentioned, and then we're going to probably stop talking about what Gessling's talking about, but we really don't have a ton going on right now for multiple reasons, mainly because the Vikings don't report to training camp until rookies report on the 20th and the veterans report on the 22nd. But Jordan Addison, he thinks that it's what do you call it? A suspension's probably going to be levied in the next few weeks. Personally, I don't think so. I think it's going to wait until after the court date. Why? The NFL has set precedent to where they wait until after the court date is done in order to, wait until the case is closed. So, which would be the same thing. But sometimes you don't even go to court. It's just settled because they want to finish their investigation. And once they finish their investigation, then they make their ruling. And sometimes somebody can be found not guilty and they decide, nope, we're still going to punish you because we found that you are. And the NFL, for lack of a better term, is the judge, jury, and the executioner. If they think that you've done wrong based on their personal conduct policy, they will still punish you. And just like a guilty verdict could potentially be like, you know what? I don't think this is worthy of a suspension, so we're not going to suspend you. It works the inverse that way too. So I think it's very interesting that he thinks it's going to be done relatively quickly, which to me says that, hey, maybe they are actually going to settle. But we're going to know what the deal is with Addison sooner rather than later because that court date is actually set for July 15th. And if he does get found guilty and then suspended, that suspension is probably 3 games. But I just keep thinking if it's just like a simple DUI charge where most people will try to settle and not go to court because you usually get a better deal by settling. What this tells me and what I'm reading into it is Addison, I think, has a defense that says, hey, I'm not actually guilty of this, even though I fell asleep at the wheel out in front of LAX on the freeway. Why else would you want to go to court? You're going to court in the sense to prove your innocence, right? To me, he's got something. I don't know what that something is. We'll find that out in time. But I find that part very interesting. And if he does have something hidden up his sleeve, could the NFL not suspend him at all? Just throwing it out there. No, not source, none of that stuff. But
and just because he's got a court date, trial date, doesn't mean it's going to go off. on that date. They can come in, the lawyers can come in, he can come in, the judge can come in. The jury could be selected, or there could be a problem with the jury, or there could be a problem with one of the judge's calendar or the lawyer's calendar, be it prosecution or defense. And suddenly we need to postpone it. Well, when's the next available date? Oh, it'll be November 30th. All right. We'll see you November 30th. And it gets bumped out again. And he plays all the season, and then we fret about, oh, no, he's going to get suspended at the end of the season. And it could get bumped out again for whatever reason after that. Remember the Star Caps case?
Mm-hmm.
Fat Pat and Kevin Williams ran that out until they were done playing football.
Yeah.
Before it was settled. And never got suspended. So then the law works in strange ways sometimes, and the court system is generally slow and deliberate. But we'll see. Hey, it could be over July 15th, and we know what it is. He may come in there and change his plea to guilty to, his lawyer says, hey, we're accepting the plea now. Blah, blah, blah. And whatever it is. And the prosecutor goes, okay, yes, I gave him the plea. We approve it. Court, please do your thing.
Yeah.
Judge says, okay. And whatever the plea is. 100 hours of community service.
And he still could get a 3-game suspension.
Oh, yeah. So, the NFL, like you said, is totally separate, and they can do what they wish.
Mm-hmm.
But they generally wait till the legal side is done.
Yes, that has been the precedent they have set. And one of the reasons why that precedent has been set is because this is a collective bargaining agreement thing. Mm-hmm. You have to treat the players with a level of respect isn't the right word, but you have to treat them with a level of innocent until proven guilty kind of thing. Just unless it's a situation where, like the AP incident, where they put him on the exempt list, where he still got paid, but he couldn't be around the team because they deemed it serious enough where while they investigate, you got to go away. You got to figure this thing out. They did the same with Greg Hardy, with the domestic violence stuff. They've done similar things with other players too. And you can do that, but this isn't a situation that warrants that because the guy does still get paid. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm guessing he comes back week 4 against Pittsburgh, and that's his return date.
And if he is out the first 3 weeks, who's stepping up?
It's got to be Jalen Nailor. And if Rondale Moore's healthy, he'll end up stepping into that third spot. Because remember, we got a sense of what life looks like without Jordan Addison last year. He missed the weeks 2 and 3 against the Niners and Texans. And they also did fine. I mean, they weren't great. They were also without TJ Hawkinson, but that offense was still humming. So you'll have Hawkinson, you'll have Oliver, you'll have a 2-headed monster backfield. And I think they'll just rely on the run game, get Justin Jefferson shots, hit TJ Hawkinson up the seam, play a bunch of 12 personnel. Maybe they'll do some 21 with Mason and Jones, which could be really fun and interesting. But I don't think it's going to be a situation where the Vikings will panic. I also think it's going to be 2 games that are relatively okay without him. Bears and Falcons, I think, are 2 of the better games on the schedule to not have Addison. And then the third game's the Bengals, which that one will stink a little bit because Jefferson's going to really want to win that game. But you never know. We'll find out in time what it looks like with a suspension. We'll find out what it looks like with what games he misses and who steps up. But it's probably just going to be a combination of Nailor and Moore and then the tight end. It's room, and that's through the air. And then they're going to pound the rock. This is going to be a running football team early on. And they're going to do the Michigan thing. They're going to try everything to make sure McCarthy does not have to play stressful quarterback. Play quarterback initially, will ease you in, and then you can do more as things go along. And then I think the ultimate goal is he's just a quarterback that does all the normal quarterback things, puts the team on his back when he has to, But the whole idea of this competitive rebuild was to try and put a team around McCarthy to where he didn't have to do any of that. And I think they've done a really good job.
Now, I found it interesting that you put Rondale Moore ahead of Ty Felton.
I don't believe in Felton. I have real concerns about him. I think if Moore is healthy, he'll be ahead of Felton year one. I really do. Moore also provides an element, like he's a true slot, and he's more of like a gadgety kind of guy. Get the ball in space and just let him do fun things. That's what he was with Purdue. That's what he's been so far in the National Football League. But yeah, I'm not super high in Felton. And if they can unlock something with his hips to where he just needs a lot of WD-40, Dave. That's his big problem. He's stiff as a board. It's like watching Plank from Ed and Eddie run routes. And I do think if you can loosen up those hips and get that improved, I think you can see a lot of growth and potential there. But right now, I don't see it personally. We'll see. I would love to be proven wrong here, but I don't think I am. Mm-hmm. But he's got plenty of time to fix some of that stuff and grow because he's only a rookie. But he's also a late third round rookie, which you don't want to count on those guys year one anyways. If you do, it's a huge plus. But you should never draft a third rounder and be like, I need that guy to play now. That is when you know you are in dire straits.
Yep. I want to address something Bulldog said. He says, Addison is going for trial. That means he couldn't agree on a plea. In a lot of municipalities, court system, you have the plea between the defendant and the prosecution. And it's sort of like we talked about with Brian Flores' negotiation. It's a negotiation deal. Mm-hmm. And if he runs it all the way up till we get in the court, we'll show up, he might get a better plea deal from the prosecution right beforehand than he does a month out or a year out right after it happened. So that's still possible. I don't think the plea is off the table. And it won't be until they seat the jury and say, all right, prosecution, give me your opening statement.
Yeah. It's we won't know about any potential plea until we actually get like word that, hey, maybe the prosecution just does not want to offer a plea. And they may want to use somebody like Addison because he's a celebrity as an example. Like if celebrities do this and they get the full punishment, so will you. And courts will oftentimes do that. I'm not saying they are. I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm saying that is a thing. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Couple more things, then we're going to probably cut it short here tonight just because it's middle of June. There's not a lot to talk about. I'm really intrigued to see what happens to the Vikings when somebody gets hurt on the offensive line, how they're going to maneuver some of that. Is Brandel going to be the first guy up no matter what? Who's going to be the backup center? Are they going to trust Michael Juergens? Are they going to try and figure something else out? I don't know. That's one thing that really intrigues me because this group has historically gotten hurt. Will Fries just broke his leg. Ryan Kelly's been hurt a bunch throughout his career. Christian Darrisaw misses like a couple games a year on average. And Brian O'Neill has often missed a game or two. So if one of those guys gets hurt, who's going to step in for him? I think that's going to be an interesting storyline. Justin Skule is probably going to be your tackle, probably. Brandel probably your guard. But who's center? That's going to be an important one because if Kelly misses time, which I'm going to be real with you, I expect Kelly to miss time this year because history says he's going to miss time. It's going to be an interesting one. And I'm intrigued to kind of see what that looks like.
Well, maybe we'll get a glimpse of it during training camp. Who's snapping for the twos? And how well are they doing?
Yeah. We absolutely will get that information. But right now we can only go by kind of projections and thought exercises and try and figure out, okay, what is this going to look like? How is this going to manifest? Because we really just don't have that kind of information right now. Last thing is I'm going to be very intrigued, and I might write about this, how the Vikings will use their defensive personnel. Are they going to want to run a lot of 3 safety looks this year? And maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't want to extend Metellus. That could be why. Because they don't want to use a lot of 3 safety stuff. They have the guys where they don't have to run 3 safety stuff. They have the guys where they don't have to use the NASCAR package, which is why after Edge 3, they have not added depth. They could have brought Jihad Ward back at a minimum deal. To my knowledge, he's still a free agent, but they chose not to. They drafted Tyrion Ingram Dawkins instead to basically do the Jihad Ward role. But with signing Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, that's a signal that they don't want to run the NASCAR package. And is it the right one? Time will tell. But I do think seeing what...
maybe not run it, but maybe run it less.
Well, one thing that's really interesting about how Brian Flores has run his defense is the 2 years that he's been here, he's run the same but completely different schemes where you're running some of the same core concepts, but year one, it was all about the Bengal Hawk blitz, where you drop your whatever side the center turns to, you drop 2 guys from that side. And that can be a huge benefit, but teams figured out how to attack it. You just attack right behind that second level and you can just pepper things in real easily. They didn't run like any Bengal Hawk last year. Last year was the NASCAR package because they didn't have defensive tackles to pass rush. They didn't have those dudes. Because they didn't have those dudes, they had to figure out how to manufacture. And they did a great job of it. They were 5th in the league in sacks, I believe, 47. And they made a huge impact game in and game out in rushing the passer. Well, now you have the dudes. And now that you have the dudes, how does that change some of your personnel usage? How does that change how many snaps Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman played? Because now you have Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel to also be guys who can drop into coverage and do everything that they do. How does that change for the 3 safety look? Because now that you have guys up front, you don't have to have Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace being that extra penetrator. Does Josh Metellus' role shrink? Does Theo Jackson play less of a role than the 3 safeties who played 90% of the snaps last year? I think trying to figure out how some of this grows and develops with Brian Flores is going to be really, really fun to watch, because it could be that they just run a lot of the same stuff, but they could be running completely different things because of the personnel that they have. And to me, it's going to be the latter. Now that they have different personnel, you're going to see them run a lot of different core stuff, which has been a 2-year trend with Flores. And that's not a big sample size. But if we get a lot of different stuff early on, then I think we can really call it a trend where he's just reformatting his defense every single year based on who he has. And not a lot of coordinators do that. You would think that it would be commonplace, but it's not. They have their scheme and they try to run it. Flores is like, okay, what do we got? All right, let's run this. Oh, this guy's out and we got this guy in. All right, let's run this now. Like, he is so fluid with those concepts, and he's egoless when it comes to his defense. We've heard stories about him going to players, be like, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think this can work on the field? Do you think these checks will work with your communication? And he's going and talking to these guys. Not every coach does that. You think they would because it's the smart thing to do, but they don't. And I'm really fascinated to see what this defense looks like because of some of those elements and how you can maneuver across the board. Dave, it's going to be a fun one because he may run a lot of the same stuff, but it all could be completely different year over year. And I'm excited for that because when Brian Flores does fun stuff, the league is like, uh-oh. Now they usually figured out by the end of the year, but by the end of the year, they may have figured out new stuff to throw at them at the end of the year that they won't be able to figure out by the time the Super Bowl comes around. So I can't wait. This defense is going to be the number one thing I watch for early on. Bulldog, you're dang right the CFL is on. Montreal and Edmonton, not the sexiest matchup. Edmonton kind of stinks, but Montreal's a house this year. I'm excited for Saturday where My Winnipeg Blue Bombers face off against the BC Lions for the second week in a row, hopefully without Nathan Rourke. And Zach Collaros is back for the Bombers, so I'm really excited. I've been binge watching, Dave. I don't know if I told you this. I've been binge watching old CFL games in Grey Cups and just getting a better history of the sport. I'm a CFL guy now. CFL is fun.
Hey, fun. Good for you. Get your football fix on.
Oh, yeah. The game I'm watching right now is the 96 Grey Cup. Doug Flutie with the Toronto Argonauts. Doug Flutie in the CFL. Yeah, we're having some fun. But that is going to be our show. The wife and I are going to go to a baseball game tonight in town.
Twinkies or the St. Paul Saints?
Nope, just town ball. Delano's got the nicest town ballpark in the state. Great bleachers. They have plastic rocking chairs on the third baseline and in left field. $5 to get in. A beer's $3. A pretzel's $3. Peanuts are $2. And there's the whole field, all the fences are covered in ivy. It's just great. Great atmosphere.
Well, that freaking rocks. Sounds like fun.
It's tremendous. We're excited. We were supposed to go last night, but they moved games. So we get to go tonight instead.
Got that. Tomorrow, I have the NFC North show. And I told people it was on Wednesday, which it normally is. Now it got moved to Friday. It's going to be over on Bleachers to speakers. And then Sunday, we have two old bloggers at our normal time. Darren and I are going to be talking about the happenings of the week plus more.
Mm-hmm.
And then Monday morning, you can catch me on the Fans First Football Show on the podcast feed. And we're going to be talking about the NFL. And only what's going to be interesting about this one, it's the two NFC guys, me and the guy from the Eagles. So there's going to be a lot of picking on AFC teams. I guarantee that.
That's good. Let's end with this. T. Kubler asks, with what the Vikings gave up for Dallas Turner, is the idea of trading and drafting for him a colossal bust if he does not have double-digit sacks in 25 and 26? I'm trying to figure out a way to word this because I think sacks are great. Sacks are important. But if you only get 8 or 9 sacks, but your pressure percentage is 20, 25%, in that elite level range, but somebody else ends up finishing a bunch, getting pressure on the quarterback is the most important thing. Can you be consistent in creating havoc where you're creating pressure, you're batting passes down? And with Dallas Turner, he's going to be doing a lot of dropping back. He's going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff. But if you funnel the quarterback into somebody else, to me, that's just as important as you getting the sack because you caused it. You were the reason for it, even if it doesn't equate to your numbers. So while I understand hey, if this guy doesn't have X amount of sacks, is he a bust? I think it's more about how his play translates into sacks and into creating havoc for the offense. If he does those things, I'm fine with it. Jared Verse was a borderline all-pro last year, and he had 6 sacks. Just 6. So that number to me is not going to be as important. But I will say from a finishing standpoint, if he gets to the quarterback and then struggles to just finish the job, and then some of those turn into big plays, I think we can have a different, more nuanced conversation. I loved Shamar Stewart, who got drafted by the Bengals. But one of the big things with Stewart was he couldn't finish once he got there because he was just all gas, no brakes. He's got to learn how to finish. But if he does, he could be just an elite level pass rusher. So I think there's a nuanced conversation with Turner. I don't think it's going to be as simple as a lot of people will make it out to be, because what does your play result in? If other people get sacks because of your play, that's just as important as you getting sacks. But it doesn't show up on the stat sheet like that, which is why we look at stuff like pressure percentage, how you're winning. Those things all matter a lot.
So throw in pass coverage.
Yeah.
He's not just a straight get to the quarterback edge.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be playing in pass coverage, which ties back into Metellus because he's going to be eating into some of those roles as well. And how many pass blocks, how many interceptions, how many whatever. That all plays into it. You got to look at the whole picture, whole body.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I am very, very excited to see how everything manifests over the next few weeks. And we're going to have a lot more coming up for you here on Vikings First and SKOL. Looking to try and book some guests. I thought I had one, but it looks like they just had another kid. So we're going to pivot. I'm going to try and get some guests on. We'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, we're still going to be here every Monday and Thursday now, 6:05. And being on Thursday is going to be really nice because we'll be a little bit closer to the game. And guess what? It'll be great in the fact that, hey, we'll be your lead into Thursday night football every single week. And the benefit for me is I don't have to worry about missing the start of Dynamite anymore, which isn't why we changed it, but it's a nice positive for me. It's an unintended consequence, especially because they were in Arena, Mexico last night. Holy crap, was that cool. It's like a Vatican cathedral for professional wrestling. It's just an incredible atmosphere. But Monday and Thursday, Real Forno Show. Make sure you change your calendars. That is going to be consistent. Now, we may do more stuff throughout the week. We may have extra shows where, hey, we have interview and we got to go live at this time. So we just will, which is why we always ask you to like, subscribe, and ring that bell on the YouTube side, because when we go live, you're going to get a notification a half hour before the scheduled show starts and when it starts. Even if you can't join live, you'll know you have something ready to watch. So thank you guys, everybody. As you can see, training camp schedule, that is the public schedule. All those light gray dates that you can go and attend. I'm going to try and attend as many of them as possible. We'll see how many I get to, but we'll see. But thank you guys so much for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!